Oh man. Oh, he's going supersonic.
Oh, God.
Hey, can I try that?
You want to hit?
Yeah, give me a hit.
No. God. Welcome to Plot Matrix. This is Season 1, Episode 5 of our follow-along screenwriting podcast. Over the course of this season, we are writing a movie about a fictional treasure hunt industry. We've been imagining that there's one team that competes and wins almost every year, a team we're calling the Incumbent. And that is who we are discussing today. So, Brian, how you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be back.
Well, I'll just say today's going to be a looser episode because if you have been listening, previously we had brainstormed about Linwood and then we circled back with a ridiculous amount of detail that you provided. And in the same way, today is going to be sort of the brainstorming session for the Incumbent, and then you can go and do the homework.
We've touched on this a lot in the past, the different ideas that we have, and I think we're going to leave today with a few separate backstories that could possibly be it, and then we might discuss off camera, or we might put a poll out to see what the audience is feeling. But today will be that brainstorming session with nothing solidified until probably what's the next episode? 8? 9? After this?
6?
6? I'm way ahead of myself.
Okay, so let me just lay out kind of a reminder for what the Incumbent does. The Incumbent has been winning every year because when you win the treasure hunt, you automatically get re-enrolled in the following year's treasure hunt, which is important because there are far more people who apply to be in the treasure hunt than actually get a slot. So there's a raffle. So winning is the only way that you can guarantee yourself an entry the following year. And because they're winning so much money every time they compete, they have this nest egg that is just accumulating larger and larger. And that just means that they have access to all these other resources. So they really run their team like a whole company operation. And they just are staying one step ahead of Linwood because they're able to keep competing and they have all this money.
Yeah, it was funny when I was doing the timeline of Linwood's history, I kept going to those like inflation calculators to see what the entrance fee would be from like 1850 until now.
Yeah.
And I definitely can see how the price over the last century especially has just been skyrocketing in terms of entrance and prize. But them having the stranglehold on the victory over, we'll say at least probably 30, 40 years of competitions has given them that leg up.
Yeah, because let's just say if that number, right now we're defining the winnings as $50 million, right? If that number basically stayed consistent and grew during inflation, they would have earned $500 million.
Yeah.
$500 million. But a lot of that is now going out to all the resources that they pay for in order to keep the incumbent status. So in my mind, they're really less driven by money and more holding on to this life's work. So the Incumbent, I should say, is the team, but it's also the CEO of this team, this main person, right?
Yep.
But today we're going to be discussing all the people that could be on that team, all the resources they could have at their disposal. And I think it's also worth reminding that we've been feeling that Linwood has not appreciated this crazy status, that because it has made the game feel uncompetitive just because they're expected to win every single time.
And for this episode, even though it's going to be more free-flowing, I think we should establish the kind of 4 or 5 main facets of which we're going to explore. Overall, we need to just get their general image first, and then from there move into possible origin stories. And once we kind of define those two, we can look at their resources and their team in general, and then what their arc might be over the course of the script.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be more than enough content for us to build off of for future episodes.
Yeah. So when it comes to the actual character on their image, what are you thinking?
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm gonna kick it over to you. What if you had to compare them to another company that we know of now? Because obviously they're not Apple, but they may not be a small startup that's just getting their feet in the ground. Where do you see them in terms of power and money, and then branding and image?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of comparison to another company, I don't know that there's another company I have in mind who would really have this reputation, because I've been thinking them more in terms of a character And when it comes to the character that is the incumbent, there's basically someone in our American culture that I know very well. And I think the incumbent is a great term for them. It's basically the person who basically believes that America, in particular, is a meritocracy and that they had this rags to riches story and they then climbed the ladder, the social economic ladders to reach a certain station of prominence. And because they're there, they now utilize their power and resources to try to close the door behind them.
Part of that is having a foundation that not every time, but a lot of the time is further up the ladder than the person themselves thinks that they are.
I was just talking with my parents recently about kind of the term boomer and where people feel like it comes from. Like what is the resentment behind that, even though it's obviously just a meme? And I feel like for me, as not a boomer, it really just comes from this this feeling that the baby boomers are just out of touch with how different and how difficult the world has become and how it just feels impossible to rise up your station. And it feels out of touch when older people are like, I walked into the CEO's office and I asked him for a job and he gave me one because I was so confident. And that's just like so out of touch with how things are today.
So there, you envision the CEO as being somebody stuck in the past.
I think out of touch more than stuck in the past. I think that even though the incumbent is basically the antagonist, the bad guy, and Linwood, we also established, is negative, net negative as well. They're very different because Linwood is old money. Linwood is it was basically adopting, like co-opting the like lords of England aesthetic, whereas I think the incumbent, especially with our choice to make them American, is someone who believes in this meritocracy because they made it and are basically ignoring just how lucky they got and that they rose to their power in just a different time. And they're just out of touch with how difficult things have become and are not aware of their own hypocrisy.
So when they're rolling on the scene, they're coming with the fighter jet flyover and like the sunglasses coming on, sleek suit, very in your face sort of way. That eccentric nature of the super wealthy and really kind of not rubbing it in your face, but letting you know that we're here and we're the main people on the stage.
Yes. Huge ego. You know, I would basically look to you to convert some of these things into the actual character. They could have a kid who could be in a position to take over. But if we're thinking about this character development, they would not just want to hand over the keys of the kingdom to their kid. They would want them to earn it, prove it to them. And I think that's a contrast to how you were describing Linwood. But I don't know. What do you think about sort of a secondary tension of the incumbent having kids?
I think if we were looking at this as an actual real life company, there could definitely be a place for that. Just a natural succession would make sense of seeing, and obviously the show comes to mind, but seeing that handover and maybe not having the trust in the kids or they haven't proven themselves or whatever it is. I think it's an idea that I don't want to completely shut out now, but it's one that I want to see how the rest of the story pans out before we go and include this. Because for me right now, this CEO seems like the most intriguing of the characters. And I would hate to lose some of the work that we could do with them in favor of trying to show this handoff of power. Mm-hmm. I think there are other ways that we can still incorporate them losing control without it needing to be such a clear-cut children sort of way. Because also I could see this as the type of person who is so obsessed with their work and what they're doing that their family is this company. Their family is this treasure hunt. They don't care about anything else. They're just only about the pride of winning this. So I'm not going to close it out immediately, but I kind of want to see what else we can come up with before we introduce this secondary B or C plot of this handover of the reins from the incumbent that's won for the last few decades onto a completely new person. Because I feel like we already kind of have this with the game master in a way, where the game master is transitioning and we're seeing how that can impact the competition at hand. So maybe we don't necessarily need to have that as that changing of the guard in the incumbent's company as well, but it's still worth considering.
So if at this point they're just trying to hold on to power, what do you think about their origin story? How they originally won and got into this cycle of the auto bid.
I think part of what goes into the CEO of this company is they're clever, and they definitely have the wits to outsmart in a very slick way that hasn't been seen before. But how they make that happen has to be done cleverly as well. And I think what I could imagine right off the bat is they finally get an entrance to this competition, right? And they've been trying for years and years and years after it's been rebranded into this every 4 years phase. And in the times that they haven't been selected, they've just been watching and seeing what other teams that have won, how they've made it happen. And when they finally get in there, all they know they need to do is win one. That's kind of their whole plan, is to sell out for this one competition so that they can secure the auto bid. And I could see them kind of forgoing actually doing the hunt to track down the team that has won either the previous year or somebody who has come close and is now in it again, whatever it is, or even spying on multiple teams at once and following them through the competition and just trying to beat them at the last clue.
Yeah, and I think that cycle only gets more advanced the more money and resources they start to accumulate. So, yeah, I would say even though their origin story is not going to be as present in our film, I think that something along those lines of like, you know, they liquidated their life savings in order to get a slot. It was their last $50,000 or however much the entrance fee was at the time. And then there's just this lore that they describe, but in reality, they were just playing dirty.
Definitely playing dirty.
Okay.
Because I think that's an undercurrent that still sticks with them now. Because I think if they started out spying on the best team and that's how they found the original treasure, I think as they go along, they're smart enough to realize, oh, we need to keep doing this.
Yeah.
So obviously winning over the course of 40 to, we'll say 60 years, whatever, there's not going to be seamless domination through each of those. There's going to be times where it looks like other competitors are going to win, but they always figure out the way to come out on top, no matter the circumstances, no matter the head start that other teams have.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be like, oh, if they spy on the first one, they're definitely spying on the later ones as well. And every time they compete, they take something new with them. So even though I think the CEO is a bit, not stuck in the past, it was out of touch with the current day.
Out of touch.
I still think they're able to evolve extraordinarily well with the times and the circumstances. And part of that is just like running a company. You know, the CEO themselves doesn't need to be this amazing individual. They just need to know how to orchestrate a team.
Yeah. And it makes them sort of a parallel of Benedict Linwood, the founder. There's a lot of key differences there. But at this point that we'll talk about later, the Linwood needs to leapfrog them and come out on top because they're basically just kicking their booty.
Do you have any thoughts on what the CEO of the Incumbent, the
Incumbent, when we say the Incumbent, we mean the person.
Okay, so now we mean the person, not the company.
Yeah.
Okay, so the person. Do you have any imagination of what their career might have been prior to this? I know you said they might have liquidated their life savings, but anything that would set them apart? Because they themselves are not generationally wealthy. They're not coming from a American tycoon type family. They're not Rockefeller or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But at least that's what I'm picking up here. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
They like to think of themselves as some blue collar, salt of the earth type person, and they just had the cunning to save up enough money, liquidate their savings, and start competing. We could have made them this more earnest person when they started out. We've already sort of said they played dirty at that time. But, what if they didn't play dirty? What if that was something that developed over the length of their status where they kept doing worse and worse things to hold on to it? But at the beginning, they really they were a chess master or a philosopher or a historian or something noble that felt like they were going to be a good poster child for Linwood, but then they have just had this descent into eccentricity with their growing wealth, a certain level of like maniacal madness and everything else. And that would create a parallel between our protagonist and the antagonist past, so they could see their younger self in our earnest, authentic, innocent protagonist that we develop for our story.
Gotcha.
But I know that's different from what we said. What do you think?
I think both have merit. I think they're also not mutually exclusive. I mean, they could have been somebody who started the competition and thought they had the strategy of, I'm going to do this the right way, and that's what's going to set me apart. And then along the way, they're starting to lose, and they're like, oh man, just kidding. I need to do whatever it takes to win. And it's getting that taste of glory and seeing like, I cheated my way to win, but I won. And now I'm in this for good.
Especially if we start them out as more earnest, and then maybe even on that first treasure hunt where they win, they were mostly playing by the rules, but there was just one little transgression, some little information they got slipped, or something that started them down on this path where they've basically internally justified that, well, espionage is just part of the game, right?
Definitely.
Or physical altercations part of the game, or exploitation or extraction, or some of these like worse principles. And over the course of their winning, as Linwood ups the stakes and the difficulty, they keep playing dirtier and dirtier. And so that's their arc over the course of before our film. And by the time we get there, this is basically our story is going to be their breaking point, where Linwood's popularity is declining. They bring on a new game master to try to make the game competitive again and to try to outsmart the incumbent. And then over the course of our film, it's basically the unraveling of the incumbent due to hubris. They escalate everything up to 11 to try to hang on, because I think what's most important for their arc is this auto bid, because if they lose, then it's
over.
basically game over.
There's no way that Linwood ever allows the raffle, the completely randomized raffle, to ever allow them back into the competition. It's funny because you make the point that popularity is declining, and it's interesting because it's I feel like this is the case with a lot of sports where I don't even know if it is. I think interest in competing is declining a little bit because there's just outright domination. There's just no way. And I think all the competitors know there's no way they're going to be able to even come close to the incumbent. But I think all the drama is getting more and more people interested, and the industry itself is growing. I don't know how you feel about that.
But there's less drama because it's uncompetitive. The incumbent is just expected to win every single time.
Right, but I think the damaging of the Linwood brand in the sense that, we have now these scandals that are happening with the incumbent, or these towns that get ransacked, or whatever it is, the dirty side of the competition is what's driving people to tune in with more interest.
Okay. Basically, the game master changes. It favors a different type of competitor. Our protagonist is doing really well, and as a result, the incumbent is pulling out all the dirty tricks that they possibly could. And I think in doing so, out of hubris, they are starting to unravel the company. They crash their jet. People start quitting.
I think we need to see a collapse of the community that is the company, in the sense that definitely, like we said earlier, there's no way they were winning so perfectly every year. There was definitely hardships, and they still came out on top. And I think the company would have a strong feeling of support for their leader, that no matter the circumstances, we are going to make it through and triumph. But I think this one needs to start being apparent with those extreme acts that, now it's no longer certain, and we see them start to slowly turn on their leader and collapse. And it needs to be extreme. Otherwise, I don't think they would so easily walk away from this company. I think a lot of them would want to stick in until the last moment to see if it's really true. But if the situations become so dire that it's either they stick around for this treasure hunt and possibly lose their life or someone that they love, it's just not worth it anymore.
Yeah, and I think let's mention some of the members of their team now, because my thought is that one of the appeals of this industry is that it creates a market for a lot of these academic fields that maybe aren't very lucrative otherwise. If you just think about the types of people that would be needed to decode these clues. So I just have a list here. Do you want to go through it and comment on them?
Yeah, well, I already disagree. I feel like a historian makes tons of money. Obviously, all these history professors.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, they're rolling in their McLarens, having a good time.
Yeah. So a linguist I've always thought of as fairly obvious, especially because a lot of the clues will just be something poetic that needs to be decoded. I have translator on here separately. There's just someone to break down the language that's used in these clues.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about this company is there are no shortage of roles.
Yeah. I want the resources in their team to be kind of comical in how extensive it is.
Definitely. Do you want to continue with the team?
Yeah. So historian
Of course.
makes sense. And then some definitely like an expedition leader or a mountaineer, someone that's sort of the fixer that enables them to go to really remote locations.
That's something that I'm going to leave to you.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to write it, but you are the resident camper.
Yeah. So then analyst, I thought of more in the like CIA term analyst, someone who is just in the headquarters, just trying to break codes and just figure out maybe Linwood's pattern of movement, tracking their flights, that kind of thing. That's not like a field agent for espionage, but analysts are just sort of involved in the war room. Translator is pretty obvious. Diver is pretty obvious. Someone who can go down to try to recover things underwater. Security for the whole operation. You know, I think that obviously if they're spotted around the globe, other contestants and other people will just be gravitating towards them because there might be treasure where they're going to. But then true counterintelligence, true espionage and field agents should be involved, both targeting Linwood for information and the other team members if they're doing a good job. And probably like a lock picker. Ideally, Linwood might have the treasure hunt with like a key that you need to have, but I think the Incumbent is a little more of a brute force operation. They probably have a lock picker.
I swear in everything we do, we somehow manage to incorporate lockpicking.
Yeah.
Like in every story we write, one way or another, lockpicking seems to make its way into it.
Yeah. In my short film that I wrote and directed and you acted in, we had your character do lockpicking, which you actually learned lockpicking for.
I feel like that's why I always put in everything now is because I know it and I actually know how it's not easy, but it's surprisingly easier than you think.
Yeah. And you have used it in your life
multiple times
for legal reasons.
Yeah. I come here and I watch you sleep sometimes when I get lonely.
That would not be illegal, just to clarify.
Oh,
if that's true. Oh, here's a little writing request. Let's say that the Incumbent has some type of superstition.
Okay.
Try to find a place for that.
I know lots of those.
Okay.
Sports people are crazy.
Okay. And then let's just talk about some of their material resources, just because we need to be putting this detail, this imagery out on the table. So they definitely have a headquarters, some big warehouse or hangar where they keep everything and that they work out of, because that'll be really good imagery for the film, obviously.
Like what's that in the Avengers, that ship? Do you remember
No.
Or like Doctor Strangelove? Do you remember that?
I've not seen.
You haven't seen Doctor Strangelove?
The last Marvel movie I saw was probably like Iron Man 2.
Doctor Strangelove is the Stanley Kubrick movie from the 60s.
Oh, Doctor Strangelove. Sorry.
Did you think I said Doctor Strange?
I know you said Doctor Strangelove, but just after you said
I guess
Avengers and I heard Doctor Strange, I was like, Brian, I don't watch MCU movies.
Okay, that's fair. Okay,
no. But Doctor Strangelove, yeah, the War Room.
Yeah.
Which their headquarters should definitely have something like that, where there's like a big televised map of the world.
Yeah. Like a panic room.
Yeah.
Stuff
absolutely.
Like that.
You can decide, does the Incumbent stay in this headquarters and conduct everything from there, or are they a person who goes out on the front lines?
Yeah, I mean, there's three options for that. It's entirely on the field, or entirely in the field, entirely in the warehouse, or the mix.
Right.
I got to go do this myself.
Yeah. There's basically every form of transportation. We could have a jet, a helicopter, mountain bikes, dirt bikes, boats, jet skis, full James Bond villain like arsenal of transportation modes. They would definitely have like a boat with like sonar or like a small submarine.
Of course. And I think part of it's going to try to not go full Bond, but right at the doorstep of what these ludicrous vehicles would have on them that would be useful for any sort of treasure hunt necessities. So, I mean, if a car has the ability to deploy like a backhoe bucket to just dig up a piece of land immediately, something like that, something that would seem absurd, but makes sense given what they have to do in these tasks.
Yeah. Obviously, metal detectors. I think I should just say that for finding buried treasure.
We need to figure out what the treasure is in. Is it a chest? Is it a box? What is it?
I'll see you at episode 20.
Okay, sounds good.
And then finally, just maybe more forward-thinking things. They probably obviously have like a server room or something, but 3D printers can be involved. Saying 3D printers as a stand-in for future technology type things.
Okay. That all checks out with me. Because this is one of those episodes where we're just going to brainstorm a little bit. I don't even know if we need to go further in depth than that. This was enough to get the gears turning, and hopefully for the audience as well. This is already painting some imagery in your mind, but right now I'm pretty content to just leave it here.
Yeah. So my questions for you to come back with: tell me about this main character. Give them sort of a name, age, just some specifics for us to work off of. Make a decision about whether or not they started out more innocent. Do they have a son or daughter? Are they in the picture? These are all questions for the audience as well. But basically just getting into the specifics of this character and the resources that they have, which are going to be a little more defined by the treasure hunt once we start designing it.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's just get into some of our feedback from prior episodes. So you can always give us feedback by DMing us on Instagram, commenting on YouTube, or like we said last episode, you can leave us a voicemail. That phone number is on your screen. It is 424-245-0601. Let's listen to a voicemail from Connor.
Hey, this is Connor. Got an idea for plot matrix for Linwood Treasure Cup. So I was listening to the scholarship part. Instead of a scholarship, you guys should borrow from some real life ARGs like Cicada 3001, where they put out an open puzzle to the entire world. That's extremely difficult. And whoever is able to solve it first, or the first few people that solve it, get the scholarship. And that's the idea. Thanks. Yeah, boy!
Well, thank you very much, Connor. So I just pulled it up. Cicada 3301.
I just saw this. I saw it. There's a YouTube video essay on this.
Oh, really? Okay. It's a nickname given to an alleged enigmatic organization that posted 3 sets of puzzles online. So basically just difficult puzzles. The third puzzle has yet to be solved. But yeah, essentially to reiterate, his idea there is the grant team, should we include them, is not chosen randomly, not an application. It is a puzzle that they need to solve. And if they solve the puzzle, they get the grant program.
I think this is an excellent idea. I think it's perfectly on brand for Linwood and what they would require their contestants to do. It's like an early test. Part of what I want for the grant team is that they are comprised of 10 people who do not know one another, that come from all different regions from around the world and are forced to come together. And that's why the grant team really hasn't done well in prior years, is no one's been really able to crack the code of how to take 10 distinct personalities that are meeting for this particular reason for the first time and have them all succeed without any prior team building.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of making that team a reality, this is a perfectly logical solution, and one definitely that's a lot of fun to play with.
So thank you so much for that contribution, Connor. Again, we would really encourage you to participate, reach out to us. Our Instagram is just @plotmatrix. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Your hosts are myself, Jackson Casimiro, and Brian Smail III. Special thanks to everybody who commented and wrote in. This is a production of Lunation Lab. Learn more at lunationlab.com.
See you next week.